by Brendan D. Murphy. About the author. Brendan D. Murphy is an independent researcher and author who has been studying metaphysics, the occult, physics, and related subjects since a profound metaphysical awakening around the age of 20. Ad Namid Sense 160 by 600 Blue Now 28. Brendan has spent the past 4 years researching and assembling his forthcoming book series The Grand Illusion on a full-time basis in preparation for release in 2012. To contact Brendan, view free book excerpts, or to just say updated on developments, visit his new fan page at www.facebook.com. Brendan D. Murphy fan page. Some 2,500 years ago, the Buddhist text, the Avatamsaka Sutra, described the cosmos allegorically through the imagery of Indra's net. In the heavenly abode of the deity Indra, there was cast an infinite net reaching in all directions, and at each node point in the net there was a jewel, each reflecting the light of all the others, infinitely. Should any jewel be touched, each of the infinite other jewels would instantly be affected, presaging Bell's theorem that everything is interconnected in this interdependent universe. The Buddhist vision essentially describes a holographic universe, our holographic universe. In the Tower of Physics, Capra explains the relevance of Indra's net to particle physics, stating that particles are dynamically composed of one another in a self-consistent way, and in that sense can be said to contain one another. This is a principle of the hologram, that each part contains within it the information that codes for the whole. In other words, all information fundamentally exists non-locally, infinitely reflected in all the facets of existence. So, what is a hologram? A hologram is produced when a single laser light is split into two separate beams. The first beam is bounced off the object to be photographed. Then the second beam is allowed to collide with the reflected light of the first on photographic emulsion film, creating and recording an interference pattern that looks something like the concentric rings that form when a handful of pebbles is tossed into a pond. But as soon as another laser beam, or in some instances just a bright light source, is shined through the film, a three-dimensional image of the original object reappears. What's more, if the image is, for example, cut down the middle, or even divided into dozens of fragments, each section will contain not a particular section of the object, but the whole thing, albeit at a lower resolution. Holograms are true three-dimensional images. This is evidenced by the fact that you can move your head while viewing the image and see it in a different perspective. This includes revealing part of the image which was hidden at another viewing angle. Shown above are 3 images from the same hologram, obtained by looking through it at different angles. Note that the pawn appears in different perspective in front of the king behind it. Each piece of the hologram contains a particular perspective of the image, but it includes the entire object. The image at upper right is the view through the larger part of the hologram, while that at lower right is through a small corner cut off the hologram. While the view through the small corner is from a particular point of view, it contains the whole object. Images source http://hyperphysics.phystu.edu/edurbaseoptmodholog.html. The information is essentially distributed non-locally throughout the holographic film. The hologram's ability to store and process massive amounts of data is essentially due to the properties of light, which, incidentally, the body's own DNA and cellular systems all use to communicate throughout our physical organism. The photon itself is considered to be localized information in its purest form. In 1997, a young physicist named Juan Maldacena used M-theory and brains to be exact to suggest that the manifest world in its entirety could be a holographic projection of information embodied in its boundary. The latest discoveries across all scientific disciplines are revealing the physical world and its multifarious phenomena is imbued with and informed by a holographic field, thus it is innately interrelated, coherent, and harmonic at all scales of existence. Recently, German scientists using equipment for detecting gravitational waves encountered a particular and unexpected noise, possibly the sound of the microscopic quantum convolutions of spacetime, according to Craig Hogan, a physicist at Fermilab in Illinois. Hogan had actually predicted the existence of this sound and approached the Germans with his explanation, suspecting that it may be due to the universe being a giant cosmic hologram. Cosmologists have found that the entire universe can be described as a type of hologram, or as interference patterns in space and time. Physicist Raphael Bousso wrote, "The amazing thing is that the holographic principle works for all areas in all space-times, further proving this applies to all scales." Researchers at IBM created a holographic projection in a carefully arranged assembly of several dozen cobalt atoms 20 nanometers in diameter. When they inserted a magnetic cobalt atom into the ellipse, a fully configured ghostly image of it also appeared at the other focus of the ellipse. Indeed, David Bohm and Carl Pribram discovered the holographic properties of nature concurrently for themselves, working as they were in the physical domain and the realm of the human brain, respectively. The information within a system is more fundamental than the energy through which it expresses itself, and the probabilities that describe a system are never random, as they are often wrongly interpreted. Instead, they always embody information. Whether they describe quantum possibilities or macro phenomena in the physical world, everything is fundamentally informational. Noted physicist Anton Zeilinger states succinctly in Dance of the Photons that the concepts of reality and information cannot be separated from each other. This is illustrated brilliantly by Thomas Chalko in his excellent article Is Chance a Choice? The Essence of Nature on Apparent Electromagnetic Randomness, being broadcast over the frequencies of a digital mobile phone network which college students, unaware that the frequencies they were observing belonged to actual intelligent conversations between living people, were instructed to investigate. The students analyzed the data using a statistical approach that allowed them to actually make predictions of many events within their frequency band. They had become quite convinced that their theory actually described the reality, and statistically speaking, it did to some extent. However, Chalko points out that by adopting a statistical approach, the students completely missed millions of very real intelligent phone conversations. Our students just couldn't imagine that what appeared to them as random was actually the consequence of a very intelligently encoded information transfer. As a result, they didn't even try to decode anything. The inference is clear: true randomness is an illusion, an artifact of limited perception and knowledge. Their universe deals in intelligently encoded information that is intrinsically meaningful and thereby creates an ordered and meaningful cosmos, but there are many ways to analyze and extract information and meaning from the one-system complementarity. The phone calls taking place between people manifested within the M-band as seemingly random fluctuations, but in reality these fluctuations were the result of conscious choices being made each moment by the people holding the conversations that possessed and expressed meaning to them and their own particular methods of analysis. The phone calls taking place looked random to the students because of the way they looked at them. They were not decoding them in a way that allowed them to extract or perceive the embedded meaning within privy to the speakers. What if the quantum field's random quantum fluctuations are really the functions or effects of the language being spoken by the holographic cosmos as it converses non-locally between its many and varied component parts? What if lurking behind it all is conscious choice, on a scale we can barely begin to comprehend? What if the ancients were right, and modern science has brought us full circle back to a teleological cosmology, one in which we are no longer the centerpiece of a dead and meaningless universe, but, as conscious beings, an integral part of an intelligent and fundamentally conscious holographic multiverse in a holographic and self-referencing fractal universe? If sentience and intelligence exists at one scale, it must exist on all of them. It is interesting that Bohm's research into plasmas yielded the observation that electrons in a plasma configuration began to act as if they were part of a larger, interconnected whole, so much so that he frequently had the impression that the electron sea was alive. Misha Sandalovichu and colleagues have even created plasma spheres that can grow, replicate and communicate, fulfilling most traditional requirements for biological living cells. Scaling things up, single-chilled slime molds demonstrate the ability to memorize and anticipate repeated events, a team of Japanese researchers reported in January 2008. The study clearly shows a primitive version of brain function in an organism with no brain at all. In the late 19th century, over 110 years ago, Sienkiewicz observed the feeding activities of the amoeba Colpodella pugnax and found them so poignantly indicative of intelligence that he remarked that one is almost inclined to see in them consciously acting beings. Scaling up still further, in his fascinating 1919 study, Modern Psychical Phenomena, Hereward Carrington detailed rigorous experiments on a group of especially talented horses which were capable of carrying out complex mental arithmetic, beyond even the mathematical abilities of the scientific men. Testing them, their intelligence and communicative abilities with humans surpassed anything previously expected of the equine species. Knowing that we have this incredible universe ostensibly permeated with intelligence at all scales, the holographic principle demands that these different expressions of consciousness must be integrated and woven together in a unified psychic tapestry, interconnected in ways unrestricted by space-time non-locally. This is what psychical research and parapsychology have overwhelmingly shown. I cite many experiments proving this point in The Grand Illusion 1. 15 Radon analyzed the results of variations of staring experiments, constituting 33,357 trials over 60 experiments. The objective in these experiments was for the subject to attempt to guess correctly exactly when they were being stared at when they had no normal way of knowing. The overall success rate was 54.5% as opposed to the 50% expected by chance, registering odds against chance of 202 octodecillion, that's 2 times 10^59 to 1. Even accounting for an estimated 6 unreported negative studies, odds against chance remained absurdly high at 1046 to 1. There is an indisputable though subtle observer effect on living systems, in other words, some sort of subtle info-energetic transfer in the consciousness or time domain ether is precipitated merely by paying attention, suggesting we info-energetically communicate with and feed whatever it is we focus on. The research of the Global Consciousness Project (GCP) has yielded irrefutable proof of the link between the quantum sea vacuum and processes occurring within the collective human mind on Earth. The GCP has set up all around the globe, some 65 as at 2007 random number generators RNGs whose data is fed into the Internet and linked back to Princeton University. The team looks for correlations in the data between the RNGs. For instance, in data from 4 hours before the September 11 terrorist attacks which, according to the FBI and the notorious Dick Cheney, cannot be evidentially linked to Osama bin Laden, and certainly not to the bare minimum 7 hijackers who turned up alive after the fact, they found an enormous level of coherence between the RNGs, indicating a hyperdimensional forewarning of a large impending event and collective subconscious focusing on it. The period immediately surrounding the event shows a huge spike in coherence as humanity's collective mind was focused consciously on events as they unfolded. The same results occurred before the Asian tsunami of 2004 and during the funeral service of Princess Diana. The September 11 RNG's deviations from chance represented the largest such deviations for the whole year of 2001. Though there are many other sources substantiating the notion, the GCP alone has effectively proven that consciousness is a real something that it can see into. The near-future collective consciousness focused in harmony can affect quantum events, suggesting that consciousness is itself more fundamental than any form of energy matter in spacetime, that it is subquantum in a sense. As I show in TGI 1-2, consciousness appears to be synonymous with the spiraling torsion energy of time-space, the time domain, a non-local implicate order that governs the formation of our spacetime reality. It is this energy that appears to be responsible for non-local effects in quantum physics and virtually all mind-matter interactions documented in the annals of psi research. If we are supplying energy to ideas, events and concepts merely by the act of observing or thinking about them, as the staring experiments and many others we don't have space for here suggest, then does the question for us at this point in history become, what should we focus on then, rather than potentially fueling the obvious criminality and corruption of the world's major manipulating political and financial institutions, World Bank, IMF, governments, etc. with our angst and resentment, and rather than feeding undesirable future scenarios with worry about what horrors might yet be, maybe our responsibility in the moment right now is, as Gandhi said, to be the change we want to see in the world. Thus we answer our earlier question which asked what to direct our mental energies towards, whatever it is that we want to make manifest in the world. After all, the seed conditions for mass paradigm shifts have never been better. Copyright 2011 Brendan D. Murphy. References 1 Earth, Seeing Past the Edge, 109. 2 Laszlo and Caravan, Cosmos, 19. 3 Faria, Scientific Evidence that the Entire Universe is a Holographic Projection Around the Earth, February 7, 2010. www.nitarama.com. 4 Radon, Entangled Minds, 13. 5 Earth, 114. 6 Laszlo and Caravan, 49. 7 Xiling The Dance of the Photons, 267. 8 Shorko, Island Chance, A Choice, The Essence of Nature, http newjournal.net, choice.html. 9 J. Alfred, Our Invisible Bodies, 658, 133-4. 10 Slime Molds Show Surprising Degree of Intelligence. Discover Magazine 2009. http discovermagazine.com. 2009 Jano 7111. C. Blavatsky, Studies in Occultism, 12 Radon, Entangled Minds, 127-9. 13 C. Jones, Science, 14 Ibid, 91-2, 15 Radon, Entangled Minds, 195,207.